Not even the gods could challenge the power of King Aldric Drayton, the White Lycan King, whose name alone struck fear into the hearts of those who dared to dream of his throne. In a kingdom where power and lineage define your worth, King Aldric Drayton, the White Lycan King, stood as the most feared and revered ruler. His strength was unparalleled, his kingdom vast, his wolf legendary. But when the time came for the great choosing, a quest to find a queen worthy of his throne, thousands of women flocked to Ardentor's heart, each hoping to win his favor. Daughters of noble houses, battle-hardened warriors, sorceresses with powers to charm, they came with riches, beauty, and bloodlines to claim the crown. Yet the king's wolf remained restless, his gaze indifferent to the grand display of wealth and status. He had seen it all, and none of it stirred him. For in the ancient magic of the mate bond, power meant nothing. It only sought the missing piece of a soul. And so, it found its echo not in the glittering court or the finely dressed women who graced the ballroom, but in the quiet, forgotten corners of the castle, in the heart of a silent Omega who no one noticed. Isla, 21 years old, with hair the color of autumn leaves and eyes that shimmered like frosted glass, was just another servant in the castle's sprawling kitchens. Orphaned, low-ranked, with no title to her name, she was the embodiment of silence. She had no need for riches or beauty. She had none of those. Yet her presence was more powerful than anyone realized. To the court, Isla was nothing more than a shadow, a quiet presence moving between the kitchens and the servants' quarters. She never spoke a word, and no one bothered to ask her name. She was ignored, dismissed, and yet the king's wolf had already sensed something, a pull, an echo, something deeper than the grandeur of the world around her. If you're captivated by Isla's story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from by commenting your city below. As the grand ball continued, with laughter and the clinking of goblets echoing through the halls, Isla retreated into the quiet spaces of the castle. The energy in the air, the ambition, the hope, the anxiety, felt foreign to her. In the humble kitchen, she felt a strange kind of peace, away from the politics and power struggles. Here, she was simply herself, hidden from the world that would never see her for who she truly was. But something was about to change. For deep within her, a power long buried was beginning to stir, and the pull toward the king would soon become too strong to ignore. Isla stood by the hearth in the kitchen, the flickering firelight casting shadows across the stone walls. The warmth of the flames didn't reach her heart. Here, in the midst of the castle's chaos, she was a ghost, invisible. She had always been silent, always hidden, but something was changing. The pulse of the castle, the energy of the great choosing, was too thick to ignore. She could feel it now, tugging at her very soul. It wasn't just the king's presence, although his power vibrated through the air like a living thing. No, it was deeper than that. It was something ancient, something that had been locked inside her for years, now beginning to awaken. Yet, in the distance, a voice echoed through the halls of the castle, one that carried with it ambition and ruthless determination. Lady Seraphina, dressed in the finest silks and jewels, was the very image of nobility. Her long raven hair cascaded down her back, the light from the chandeliers gleaming off her gold-adorned gown. She was the daughter of Duke Harrington, a powerful man with even more powerful connections. And she was here at Ardentor to win the king's heart. Isla had seen Lady Seraphina before, during one of the many grand feasts held in the castle's glittering halls. The noblewoman had glided across the ballroom like a predator stalking its prey, her eyes scanning the room with sharp precision. Every guest had paused in awe of her presence. Every movement was calculated, every word carefully chosen, but to Isla, she was just another beautiful, entitled woman who would never notice her. Lady Seraphina was the kind of person the world praised. Strong, powerful, determined, the perfect fit for a king. The world would expect her to win to wear the crown. No one would ever think a silent, unnoticed Omega like Isla could even come close. Yet, as Isla's fingers brushed against the cool stone of the castle wall, she couldn't help but feel the stirrings of something more, something that called her in ways she had never felt before. Lady Seraphina was beautiful, yes. She was powerful, yes, but Isla could feel the undercurrent of something darker in her. Seraphina's eyes were cold, and Isla knew the heart behind that beauty. It wasn't love that Seraphina sought, but power, the throne, and she would do anything to get it. Isla's fingers clenched into fists. She had no ambition, no desire to rule, but she was beginning to understand that she wasn't just a servant. Her silence, once a cage, might be the very key to something greater. King Aldric had seen her. The pull between them was undeniable. Suddenly, a voice cut through the silence. Sophie, her only friend in the kitchen, appeared beside her, looking frazzled. "Cassie, did you hear? Lady Seraphina's carriage was escorted by the king's beta. She's making her move. She's going to do whatever it takes to win." Isla's heart skipped a beat. The pull had begun. She could feel it in her bones, and soon it would be impossible to ignore. The evening had settled over Ardentor like a thick, suffocating blanket. The grand ball was in full swing, with music drifting through the halls and laughter echoing off the marble floors. The nobles, adorned in their finest garments, danced beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers. But amidst the grandeur, Isla felt a coldness creeping up her spine. She was in the kitchens again, her hands buried in the dough she had been tasked with kneading. The rhythmic motion calmed her nerves, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the ballroom, to the women, to the king. Lady Seraphina had already made her presence known, her every movement designed to draw the king's eye. And yet, the king's wolf, a legendary force in itself, had not responded to her. Isla had seen it in his eyes when he looked at the women parading before him. Nothing. Not a spark of interest. His gaze lingered but was cold, distant, like a man longing for something beyond what could be found in that room. The thought made her heart race. Why did she feel the pull, the stirring of something deep inside her? Why had King Aldric's wolf recognized her? A mere servant, standing far from the center of power. The uncertainty gnawed at her as she wiped her hands on her apron and glanced toward the door, as though she could somehow see him through the thick stone walls. A sudden sound broke her reverie. Footsteps, heavy, purposeful. Helena, the head cook, appeared at the threshold. "Get your head out of the clouds, girl. The firewood's low, and you, with your quiet ways, need to help with the tables." The cook's sharp tone made Isla flinch, but she nodded, the silent agreement between them still understood. As Isla moved through the kitchens, she passed by the entrance where the Great Choosing's grand feast was being held. The music, the chatter, the glimmer of jewels from the noblewomen all blurred together in a haze. But then, as she moved along the wall, her gaze shifted. King Aldric stood by the grand archway, his eyes scanning the room. But this time, they weren't just cold. They were different. They lingered. There was a spark of recognition, a shift in his stance. Her breath hitched, and she instinctively pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders, stepping further into the shadows. He couldn't possibly be looking at her, could he? Isla's pulse quickened as she turned away, retreating back into the bowels of the castle. But the feeling in the pit of her stomach lingered. She had been seen, and the connection had been made. His wolf had recognized her, the very woman the bond had chosen. The following days felt like a blur to Isla. The hum of the castle's constant activity, the clatter of dishes, the bustling servants, the echo of laughter in the halls seemed to fade into the background. Her thoughts, once grounded in the mundane tasks of kitchen work, now danced around the haunting pull she felt toward King Aldric. Every glance, every moment when she caught the king's eye, only deepened the confusion within her. His wolf had recognized her. That much was clear. But what did that mean for someone like her? Isla wasn't even supposed to be here. She was an Omega, orphaned and forgotten, with no family name, no noble blood to claim. She was just another servant in the grand scheme of things, but her silence, once a shield, felt like something more now. Something that stirred within her every time she thought of the king. One evening, as the full moon rose over the kingdom, Isla found herself in the conservatory, a forgotten space in the castle where the glass roof allowed her to gaze at the moon. It was the only place in the castle that felt like it truly belonged to her. The quiet space, with its neglected flowers and creeping vines, was a reflection of her life. Overlooked, left in the shadows, yet somehow alive in ways others didn't see. The faint scent of moon petals filled the air as she knelt before one of the wilting plants. Her fingers, almost instinctively, hovered over its fragile petals. She closed her eyes, feeling the pull of something deep within her. The moment her fingertips brushed against the leaves, a soft hum vibrated in the air, a low, almost imperceptible pulse. The plant straightened, its petals unfurling as if responding to her touch. Isla's breath caught in her throat, and she pulled her hand back, her heart racing. She had never been able to explain it, this strange affinity with nature, with life itself. It was as though the energy of the earth responded to her, as though something in her soul was intertwined with the natural world. The feeling had always been there, but now it was stronger than ever. Her thoughts raced. Was this a part of what had been awakened in her by the king? The power she had been suppressing for so long? For a moment, Isla allowed herself to feel the shift, the stirring within her that was no longer easily ignored. But the moment was fleeting. As she stepped back from the plant, a voice from the shadows broke the stillness. "Isla, you're here," came the voice of Livia, her friend and only confidant. "Are you all right? I can feel something's different." Isla turned to face her, her expression guarded. She hadn't told Livia about the strange pull, the stirrings within her. How could she explain it? "I'm fine," Isla whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's just something's changing." Livia's brow furrowed in concern, but before she could say more, the distant sound of footsteps echoed through the castle corridors. King Aldric's presence had never been more noticeable, even from afar. The energy around him, his wolf, the pull, it was undeniable. Isla's heart skipped a beat. He was closer now than ever before, and the bond she had felt with him could no longer be ignored. She turned toward the door, her breath quickening, but before she could leave, Livia stopped her. "Whatever it is, Isla, don't forget who you are." Isla's gaze met Livia's, and for the first time, she realized she wasn't just an unnoticed Omega. She was something more, something the kingdom was about to feel. The moonlight bathed the halls of Ardentor in a silvery glow, casting long shadows over the stone floors, but in the quiet, hidden corners of the castle, secrets stirred. Isla moved with the shadows, her every step echoing in the cavernous corridors. Though the castle was a maze of endless rooms and chambers, her feet led her instinctively to the one place she had not dared to venture in years, the royal archives. The heavy wooden door creaked as she pushed it open, the faint scent of aged parchment and dust filling her senses. Inside, the walls were lined with thick, ancient tomes, records of the kingdom's history, the bloodlines of powerful families, the many wars and alliances forged in Ardentor's name. But what Isla sought wasn't written in these books. What she sought was buried deeper, in the scrolls, the prophecies, the forgotten knowledge of the first kings. Her fingers traced the spines of the books, hesitating before pulling out a leather-bound scroll. She unrolled it carefully, revealing words written in ink so old they seemed to have faded with time. As her eyes skimmed the parchment, a chill ran down her spine. The words felt both familiar and alien, like a memory she had long since forgotten. "The bond of the Wolf King shall find its true mate when the Omega of the Silver Line stirs, hidden in plain sight. She shall be silent, but her silence will be the key to uniting the wolves. Her power shall awaken, and she will bring balance to a fractured kingdom." Isla's breath caught in her throat as she reread the words. The Silver Line, her family name, or what was left of it. The prophecy spoke of her, of the silent Omega, who would awaken power she never knew she possessed. But what did it mean for her? An invisible servant in a kingdom built on strength and lineage? And why now? Before she could ponder further, the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor. Isla quickly rolled up the scroll and slipped it back into its place. She backed away from the shelves, the ancient words still echoing in her mind. Silas, the king's beta, entered the archives, his presence unmistakable. Though his face was usually calm and collected, there was a weight in his eyes tonight. "You shouldn't be here," Silas said softly, his voice low enough not to carry. Isla froze. She had never spoken with Silas outside of the necessary exchanges with the kitchen staff. He had always been an enigma, a silent observer who served King Aldric with unquestionable loyalty. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Isla whispered, her gaze flickering nervously toward the door. I was looking for something." Silas stepped closer, his sharp eyes studying her. "Something? Or someone?" Isla didn't respond. She couldn't. Not when she felt the weight of the prophecy heavy on her heart. Silas seemed to read the tension in her posture, and his expression softened slightly. "You're not just a servant, Isla. I can see it now. There's more to you than what the world has let you be." For the first time, Isla felt as though someone truly saw her. Not the silent, invisible Omega who had lived in the shadows, but the woman who was awakening to something far greater than she could have ever imagined. The weight of the prophecy in Silas's words lingered as she slowly backed away from the shelves. She knew now that her silence was not her weakness. It was the key to something far more powerful. The castle was alive with whispers, with the arrival of the Great Choosing, and the eyes of the kingdom trained on King Aldric and the women vying for his favor. The political landscape of Ardentor had shifted. But the unrest brewing in the castle wasn't just about who would be chosen queen. It was about power and the lengths people would go to secure it. Lady Seraphina had always been a woman of poise, her grace flawless and her ambition sharp. She knew that the crown was within her grasp, but her vision of the throne was clouded by one unexpected obstacle. Isla, the silent Omega, the girl who had caught the attention of the king, was becoming a threat to everything Seraphina had worked for. And when Seraphina had her sights set on something, nothing would stand in her way. In the dimly lit hallways of the castle, Seraphina and Baron Thorn. Ravenshade, a nobleman who had long coveted the power at the heart of the kingdom, convened in secret. They were allies now, their shared ambitions binding them together, but their alliance was dangerous. It was not founded on trust, but on mutual greed and the promise of shared power. "The king's wolf has noticed her," Seraphina said, her voice smooth and low. "Isla, that quiet, insignificant servant. She will be his undoing if we do not act." Baron Thorn's eyes flickered with interest. "Isla? The Omega girl. How can she possibly challenge your position, Lady Seraphina?" Seraphina's lips curled into a bitter smile. "It's not about what she can do. It's about what she represents. She is the one who will make the king doubt his choices. She is the one who will show him that power is not enough. His wolf already knows it." Baron Thorn crossed his arms, his brow furrowing as he considered this. "So, what do you suggest we do? If the king chooses her, then all our efforts will be for nothing." "I will ensure that she never becomes the king's mate," Seraphina said, her eyes narrowing with cold determination. "She is an obstacle we cannot afford." Baron Thorn chuckled darkly. "You're suggesting we remove her?" Seraphina nodded, her gaze unwavering. "We must eliminate the threat before it grows. She cannot stand between us and what we deserve." The two of them stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their plans settling into the air like a storm on the horizon. Meanwhile, in the quiet corners of the castle, Isla was unaware of the dangerous plot that was being woven around her. Her thoughts were consumed by the strange pull she still felt toward the king, and the terrifying realization that her past, the truth of her bloodline, the prophecy, was catching up with her. Every step she took seemed to lead her deeper into the web of politics and power, and she was helpless to escape it. But there was something else, too. Something awakening inside her that she couldn't control. Isla's silence, once a shield, was becoming her strength. The deeper she ventured into the castle's labyrinth of secrets, the more she realized that power wasn't just about strength or wealth. It was about connection. And she was beginning to understand that she had one. A connection that could change everything. The morning fog had not yet cleared when Isla entered the kitchens, the usual clamor of the early hours muffled by a heavy, unsettling silence. The day felt off. Too quiet, too still. She could sense it, a shift in the atmosphere, a growing tension in the castle walls that had nothing to do with the food being prepared or the servants' tasks. Her heart raced as she moved through the kitchen, passing the other servants who seemed equally uneasy. The great choosing was drawing near, and the palace was rife with anticipation. Lady Seraphina had been making her rounds, trying to assert her dominance as the rightful queen, while the king's silence only deepened the growing anxiety of the court. Isla hadn't been able to shake the feeling that something was wrong, but she couldn't place what it was. The last time she had seen King Aldric, his gaze had lingered on her for just a heartbeat longer than it should have, and his wolf's presence had been undeniable. But now, a creeping doubt gnawed at her thoughts. Doubt about what he saw in her, about what her future held. As she set a tray of freshly baked bread down, her attention snapped to the door. Helena, the head cook, stormed in, her face flushed with anger. "Isla, you've been summoned," she barked. "The Queen is here." Isla's pulse quickened. Queen. She hadn't heard the official announcement yet, but there was no mistaking the tone in Helena's voice. This wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. Without a word, Isla followed Helena through the winding corridors of the castle, her footsteps echoing in the hollow silence. They reached the grand hall where the court was assembled, and there she was, Lady Seraphina, standing beside Baron Thorn, a malicious smile on her lips as she looked down at Isla. The sight of them together made Isla's stomach twist, but she held her composure. "You're late," Lady Seraphina's voice rang out, her words a mockery. "I trust you've been too busy tending to your duties to notice what's at stake here." Isla's chest tightened. "I'm not interested in your games, Lady Seraphina." Her voice, once so soft, had grown stronger, though it still carried the quiet weight of the Omega she had always been. Lady Seraphina's eyes flickered with contempt, but her gaze was not directed solely at Isla. It was a warning, a threat. "Don't think you can stand in my way," she said coldly, her eyes narrowing. "You may have caught the king's attention, but you won't keep it. I'll make sure of that." Baron Thorn stepped forward, his smile thin and dangerous. "I believe Seraphina has a point. You should know your place. After all, it's not your beauty or bloodline that draws the king, is it?" A chill ran through Isla's veins, but she didn't back down. She'd never been one to cower in the face of danger, not even now, when it was clear that Seraphina and Thorn would stop at nothing to secure the throne. And then, without warning, the trap was sprung. From the shadows, Silas appeared, his face stone cold. The air shifted as his gaze met Isla's, and his steps were measured as he approached her. "Lady Seraphina," he said smoothly, "Baron Thorn, I believe the king's decision is final." His voice was quiet, but filled with authority. Seraphina's eyes widened in disbelief. She had not expected to be confronted so directly, especially by someone as close to the king as Silas. "I will not let this go unchallenged," Seraphina hissed, her tone full of venom. "The throne is mine." But before anyone could react, Silas raised a hand to silence her. "The throne is not yours to take. The king has made his choice." Isla's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing. Had Silas just defended her? In front of Lady Seraphina? It was a moment of raw, shocking loyalty, and it left Isla shaken to the core. Seraphina's lips twisted into a bitter sneer. "We'll see how long your choice lasts, Isla," she threatened. "You may think you've won, but this is far from over." As Seraphina and Thorn left the hall, their threats hanging in the air like dark clouds, Isla was left standing in the silence of the grand hall, with the realization settling over her. She was not just a servant anymore. She was a player in a game that had been set into motion long before she even realized it. And soon, the true cost of the throne would become clear. The days following the confrontation with Lady Seraphina and Baron Thorn passed in a haze of tension. The castle, once a place of grandeur and festivity, now felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Whispers filled every corner, every shadow, and the air buzzed with the promise of conflict. King Aldric had made his choice, but no one seemed willing to let it stand. Isla couldn't escape the weight of what had transpired. She had been thrust into a world she never asked for, caught in the deadly dance of politics and power. Even her silence, once her greatest protection, was no longer enough to shield her from the storm that was brewing around her. One evening, as she walked through the castle gardens, the distant sounds of a royal gathering could be heard. Music drifted through the night air, the clinking of glasses, the low murmur of conversations, and the laughter of nobles mingling in the grand hall. But Isla couldn't bring herself to join them. She never had. The outside world, with all its power and ambition, was no place for someone like her. Yet, as she lingered by the flower beds, her mind wandered to the one person who had truly seen her, King Aldric. His eyes had never been like the others. His gaze had held something more, something ancient and knowing. She could feel it, the bond between them, growing stronger with each passing day. But she was still unsure of what that bond meant, or if she was ready to embrace it. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft crunch of footsteps approaching. She turned, her heart skipping in her chest, to see Silas coming toward her, his face unreadable. He was always calm, collected, but tonight there was something in his eyes that hinted at a storm brewing inside him. "Isla," he said, his voice low but steady. "The king is waiting for you." Isla's breath caught. She had not expected this, not after the confrontation with Seraphina. Silas had been the one to stand by her, to defend her when it mattered most, but she didn't understand why. "I can't face him, not like this," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Silas stepped closer, his eyes meeting hers with a sharp intensity. "You don't have to face him. He's been waiting for you." Isla's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the pull again, the call of something deep within her that was finally awakening. It wasn't just about the king's attention or his wolf's desire. It was something older, a power hidden in her blood that could no longer stay buried. "He sees you, Isla," Silas continued, his words carrying the weight of truth. "And he's not the only one. The prophecy, it's true. You are not who you think you are. You're more than a servant, more than a silent Omega. You are the key to something far greater than this kingdom." Isla stood frozen, her mind racing. The words didn't make sense, not entirely. But the way Silas looked at her, the urgency in his gaze, told her that everything was about to change. "You have the power to stop what's coming," he said quietly, his voice filled with a sense of finality. "But only if you speak, only if you break the silence." For a moment, the world seemed to still. Isla's heart ached in her chest. Could she really do it? Could she break the silence that had defined her for so long and reveal the power within her? The choice was hers, But the weight of the consequences, the weight of her lineage, was something she hadn't been prepared for. Silas gave her a gentle push toward the castle. "He's waiting, Isla. Don't make him wait any longer." With a deep breath, Isla turned and followed him, the sound of her footsteps mingling with the quiet pulse of her heart. As she approached the throne room, a sense of finality washed over her. The time for silence was over. The time for power was now. The grand hall was quiet, the faintest whispers of conversations trailing off as Isla entered, her heart thundering in her chest. The weight of the eyes upon her, the nobles, the court, the eyes of everyone in the room, made her feel smaller than she had ever felt in her life. She had spent her entire existence in the shadows, unnoticed, silent, but now all eyes were on her, and King Aldric. He stood at the center, the one constant in a sea of uncertainty, his amber eyes locked on her. The air was thick with tension. Even the flickering candlelight seemed to hold its breath as Isla moved closer, her every step measured. The bond between them pulsed stronger than ever, an invisible thread tugging at her soul. She could feel him, his wolf, the ancient power that had chosen her. The pull was undeniable. "Isla," King Aldric said, his voice soft but full of authority, a quiet storm. "You've made it here, against all odds." Isla looked up at him, her gaze steady, though her heart raced. The time for silence had passed. She could feel the weight of the prophecy pressing on her, the knowledge that she was not just an Omega, not just a servant, but something much more. The truth was now too powerful to hide. She had to speak, had to break the silence, not just for herself, but for the kingdom. "I've always been here," she said, her voice quiet, but for the first time in years, it didn't tremble. The words felt natural, the weight of them grounding her. "I've always been part of this kingdom, but you see me." The room was still, the silence profound. Lady Seraphina's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a snarl, while Baron Thorn stood at her side watching with suspicion, but King Aldric didn't move. He didn't blink. His eyes were unwavering as he took a step toward her, his presence overwhelming. "You are more than I thought," he said, his voice a low rumble, almost like a growl. "More than anyone ever realized. The prophecy, it's real, Isla. You are the one who will heal this kingdom, the one who will unite the pack." Isla felt the weight of his words settle over her, the magnitude of them sinking in. The prophecy had always been a distant myth, a story whispered in the halls of power, but now it was her truth. "The blood of the Silver Line flows through your veins," King Aldric continued, stepping closer until there was no space left between them. "The silence you carried was a shield, but now your voice is a weapon that will change everything." Lady Seraphina's eyes blazed with fury as she stepped forward, her voice dripping with disdain. "You can't seriously think she can lead us? She's nothing but a mute servant, a curse." Isla's gaze remained locked on King Aldric. His wolf, once dormant, was stirring, awakening in response to her. His presence was magnetic, pulling her closer, and with each passing moment, Isla felt the power within her swell. She wasn't just a servant, she wasn't just an Omega, she was a queen in her own right. With a final breath, Isla stepped forward, placing her hand on King Aldric's chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "The blood of the queen is more than royal bloodline. It is the blood of unity," she said, her voice clear and firm, carrying the weight of 1,000 years of history. "I am not just your mate. I am your queen." The room erupted in gasps. Lady Seraphina faltered, the ground beneath her shaking as the truth was laid bare. Baron Thorn moved toward the king, but before he could take another step, the sheer force of Aldric's aura held him in place. The room fell silent once again, the tension thick and oppressive. But Isla stood firm. Her voice, once silenced by fear and doubt, now rang out like a bell, strong, steady, and unyielding. No more games, no more lies, she declared, her eyes sweeping across the room. The kingdom belongs to those who will fight for it, not those who will tear it apart. Her voice echoed off the stone walls as she turned to face Lady Seraphina, who stood there, eyes burning with hatred, but for the first time, Isla felt no fear. "You have no place here," Isla said, her voice cool. "Leave, or face the consequences." And with those words, the course of the kingdom was forever changed. Let us know what you think of Isla's transformation in the comments below. Also, if you loved this story, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more thrilling twists. Your support helps us grow and bring you more epic tales like this.